Gardenera. You're tuned in to the Divided States of America show, where we take on the most divisive issues in our divided nation. We do that weekdays, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We're live, again, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And you can catch previously recorded episodes of this show with a list of topics on all three of those platforms. I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Quick takes today. Primary results from yesterday. More about my former party, and maybe a quick trip down the right-wing media headlines. We'll do it today on the Divided States of America show.
Welcome to the Divided States of America show, where your host, Marlon Gardenera, takes on the most divisive issues in our divided nation. We'll sort through the best and worst of politics and culture, asking questions and looking for answers that our two-ring, two-party circus has failed to provide. And here is your host, Marlon Gardenera.
Hey, folks, we're back for another episode of the Divided States of America show. I think this is number 33. We've been testing and trying out different methods and technology, direction and production, topics, formats, trying to figure it all out before we relaunch and grow our audience. If it were up to me, we'd be talking to a lot of people, primarily people in the middle. We would, if we were lucky, get the people on the extremes to tune in and hear what the other side is saying. You already know my thoughts. This is a divided nation. Every topic has become divisive. I'm even to the point where I think if we had consensus and we all believed the same thing, we probably still couldn't get things done. I think the bridge to that gap, I think the close to that divide is having respectful, thoughtful conversations about it, about things that are happening in the news, about things that we know are coming up. That is my goal. That is my intention. And I appreciate those of you who've been along the ride for the first 33 episodes. And equally important, those who have given feedback. I can always be reached via email, host@thedsashow.com. You can also comment on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. The most lively of the groups is our Facebook group, facebook.com/The DSA Show. Whenever we post on a specific topic, we get some pretty good feedback. We're going to continue to work, grow the audience, get guests, make this an interactive program. Just want to have most of the things ironed out before we do it. I got some advice before I came back to this. As most of you know, I was a former conservative talk radio host. It was many years ago. It was while I was still a conservative Republican. Things have changed. You've heard about some of that. You'll hear about more. Nonetheless, I enjoyed it. And I enjoy talking about politics. I enjoy engaging. It's harder to do with friends and family. You reach that point where there's nothing else you can say or do. You realize that you're at a disagreement, and sometimes emotions get involved. I don't need to do that with friends and family every day. There are millions of Americans who love the same topics. And for me, the topics relate to my children's future in America. It relates to my future grandchildren's future in America. And so many things are pivotal in that. And so many discussions need to be had amongst people who are concerned about where it is, where it's going. And more importantly, for people who are looking to find a better way to get wherever it is we end up going. I have a problem with the two-party system. The collection of power, the need or feeling to take sides, I think is part of the problem. So I've been an advocate of third parties. There hasn't been one that has taken off. There's a new forward party. I like that concept or idea simply because their motto is not left, not right, but forward. I know it bothers people on the left and right out of fear of losing power. So what? I don't care. I think the left and right could use a little loss of power and a little jolt or boost of working together to figure more things out. If there's a third party, it'll also diminish the role and value of the extremes on either side of the political spectrum. And boy, do I think that needs to happen so that we can find a place for the everyday hardworking Americans. I don't care rich or poor. I don't care what your situation is. Our leadership should reflect our people, and they should remember that the leadership they display shouldn't just be for the people that elected them. With that in mind, let's switch over to the first topic for today. All right. Mar-a-Lago's still in the news. I don't want it to be. I don't want to talk about it. It's just our current reality. Oh, if we could get this out of the news, how great would that be? It would be fantastic, if you ask me. The reality is there were documents in a place they shouldn't be. The U.S. government owns them. It's just that simple. And the discussion about declassifying or not, one can have it if you want to, One could presume that the president can snap his fingers or verbalize, these are now declassified. He doesn't have to wave a wand, but we can act like that's the power bestowed on our president, and he can. Why would you want, if you're on the right, a Democratic president to just do the same? Would you want it if you thought the Democratic president was just trying to cover for the fact that he had the documents and to make it so that what he's doing is not illegal, not a crime? He literally snapped his fingers and said, they're no longer classified. And if the latest report coming out of Mar-a-Lago is true, why would you want that information declassified? Why wouldn't you want it to go through the normal process so that the agencies that are affected, and more importantly, the people who sacrifice or are willing to sacrifice their lives to gather that information, to develop the methods to get the intelligence, why would you put them at risk to cover for one person? I don't understand the standards. That is why I would like primarily, if it were up to me, to talk to purely, in these situations, Trump supporters. I don't want the left-wing media's version where we tell you what to think, we tell you how bad everything is. It's just awful. What I want are real people to help me understand what it is that makes it so valuable and important to them to support all things, even when you should, just as an American citizen, as a human being, have questions. The report out of Mar-a-Lago most recently. Some of the material recovered in the search is considered extraordinarily sensitive. Two people familiar with the search said, because it could reveal carefully guarded secrets about U.S. intelligence gathering and methods. One of them said the information is among the most sensitive secrets we hold. Again, put aside your party, your desire for power, your will to get things your way. Why would we want the most sensitive information that we have available to the media, regular public information request? If it's declassified, the media should have access to it. If the people close to this believe that it is some extraordinarily sensitive information, and again, among the most sensitive secrets we hold, why would we want one person to cover for themselves, say it was declassified, not go through the process, and the information now be readily available? Is the value of the people who gather that, are the methods that we gather it, less important than covering for Trump having documents his attorneys signed off saying they no longer had? I've heard information about the Presidential Records Act. I've heard his ability to access information, his ability to negotiate, to have things be a part of his presidential library or part of, the history, quite frankly. And I don't dispute or argue any of those things. My question is, for all Americans, regardless of who you support, why would you want information gathering and the methods that we do it and the secrets that we hold revealed in order to cover for one person's possession of documents they've already lied and said they didn't have when they still in fact had them? Why, America? Why? Take Trump out of the equation. Let's say it's Biden, and Biden's leaving and he's got the exact same information. Why is it that half the country's blood would boil if one person did it, but it wouldn't for the other? And I'll go back and reference Hillary Clinton. Why didn't the Trump administration go after Hillary Clinton for any information they thought she had? If it's just pure politics, if politics are the motivation, we can't say Trump is above politics. We can't say the right or the left is above politics. If you're not above it, why didn't they go dig deeper? Because if Hillary Clinton had classified information that she shouldn't have had, and I've been told there were several search warrants served on her. It appears she destroyed information, is what I keep hearing, that she had, and they found some, but they didn't find it to be that important. I don't care if it's Hillary Clinton. I don't care if it's Joe Biden. I don't care if it's Barack Obama. It doesn't matter who it is. Our standards are our standards. And how we kowtow or how cowards turn their backs on people in positions of power doesn't make sense to me. And then that example being set by our leadership, when it goes all the way down the line, I mean, what do we say? How could people do this? Well, the leaders do it. That's how we could do it. They get away with it. People think they can get away with it. Human nature is to do for yourself. I get that. But it is part of why the United States is so divided. And if it were happening to the Democratic Party and Biden had these documents or Obama had these documents, I would be having the same discussion with you. Why aren't you having it with yourself, regardless of who's in power? Why would we want extraordinarily sensitive information among the most sensitive secrets we hold declassified to make it all of a sudden okay to have documents at an unsecure place? Do we really want that information out there? Do we really want to put those people at risk? Is it worth that? I mean, it's almost a simple yes or no answer. And you can give a more elaborate one. I don't get me wrong. You're free to comment here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Tell me what you think. Come on the show. Tell me what you think. I just don't get it. And I'm starting to get a little frustrated why more people aren't willing to step up and talk about it, or why where the people who support Trump go, primarily right-wing media, podcasts, radio, why don't the people there ask this question? I listen to those shows. I do. I'd love to be a guest on some of those shows and ask very simple questions. Just because he can, if in fact he can declassify it without going through the process, without alerting the agencies, without being able to protect the secrets, without being able to protect the people who gather them or the methods that we use, the sources we use to get them. Why would we want that? Why? I don't get it. It's where we are. It's where we are in American history. It's what's being reported as happening at Mar-a-Lago. There's another picture of what is a beautiful place, but not the place that our most sensitive secrets should be held. Why are people tolerating it? Why are people creating new narratives? Why are people making excuses? Why are there layers and layers and layers of answers other than, I screwed up, here are all of the documents. I should have given them to you when you asked for them the first time. One of the latest excuses, you can see it on the screen. I know you can't read it. I'll read it for you. Again, that beautiful picture of Mar-a-Lago. The next, some of the legal documentation, picture of Trump outlining the reality. In legal filings on Monday, Trump's lawyers insisted that he had been cooperating with the Justice Department. In fact, however, the narrative that's laid out, as well as other documents and interviews, show that Trump ignored multiple opportunities to quietly resolve this with the FBI. Quietly resolve this with the FBI. They were concerned of the handling of all of the classified documents in his possession. That included a grand jury subpoena that Trump's team accepted on May 11th. People said, why didn't they just subpoena the information? All of the layers of excuses included subpoenas. All of the layers say they didn't need to raid his house. This could have quietly been resolved. Trump played a role in deciding not to resolve it quietly. It reached the point it did, they say, because of the secrets that were being held. Trump may have, if he thought he had the magic wand to declassify it, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He didn't alert the people that were investigating. They should have continued their investigation if, in fact, they weren't aware or even questioned the process of declassifying our most extraordinarily sensitive secrets. They did their job. They're protecting Americans. Their job is not solely to protect the 45th president of the United States. He is no longer the executive. The power people are giving him, the position they're putting him in as if he is a king, blows my mind. No president is a king or dictator. They are not an authoritarian to me. They're an individual person voted on or not voted on. It's really that simple. Even if you support him, right and wrong should still be a factor to you. If he had just given the documents back when he was asked, negotiated and worked on via the Presidential Records Act, the documents that he wanted to keep, actually reviewing and considering the people's lives, the sacrifices that have been made to gather that information, they would have given him back, most likely, anything or everything that was pertinent to give back. And keep in mind, he is no longer the executive. So our national secrets, they're not his primary concern or responsibility. And it appears to me that he's treating it as such. And that's horrible. That, to me, is horrible. Moving on. Val Demings. Charlie Crist in Florida. Primary results. Let's talk about them. They're in. Yesterday, primaries were held in several places around our country, including Florida. And as a result of that, the new Democratic nominee for the Senate from the state of Florida is Val Demings. Val Demings is a somewhat notable member of the House of Representatives for Florida, a Democrat. She easily won the Democratic nomination to challenge Marco Rubio. Now, let me just tell you, in my former life, I was a conservative Republican. I moved away from the party when I read George Bush's book, and he said he didn't see the housing bubble coming. I can tell you I'm no financial genius. As a matter of fact, I'm the opposite. I've got my own problems. I create my own problems. I do. I'm just a human being. I don't try to elevate myself in a position of not being like everybody else. I'm just like everybody else. I've just decided to use my voice to talk about the divide. In that divide, there are people who do the right thing, wrong thing, best thing they can, worst thing they can. I'm just a regular guy. Let's always be clear about that. I supported Marco Rubio. I thought Marco Rubio was going to be a moderate Republican that could recognize in Florida there are people of all different persuasions. And I wanted him to be able to represent all of Florida, not just people who elected him. Since he's been elected, I've seen a lot more of the things that concern me about politics, primarily that they start to acquiesce to the party, they start to acquiesce to power, they start to acquiesce to the idea of that they are so important that people who don't vote for them are not. And I just saw the trend of Marco Rubio going in a direction that just wasn't good for me. Can't say it wasn't good for him. I can't even say it wasn't good for Floridians. If people reelect him, if there's a majority of people in the state who like where he has gone, that's what's best for Florida. I'm telling you my take. And in the divide, I try to find moderates. I try to find people who are willing to go across the aisle, have discussions for all of the people in their respective areas. And I keep saying Florida, but he gets to make decisions that impact people in California, New York, Rhode Island, Delaware, you name it. Everybody is affected. I supported Marco Rubio. Let me repeat that. I think I even donated to Marco Rubio's campaign. I communicated with the campaign not from a media perspective, but from a personal citizen, wondering where he was getting close to that line where it seemed like he was going a little too far right. I would ask, hey, what's this all about? And I would get legitimate responses from the campaign that would tell me, well, the position is actually this, and it may be a little bit more moderate than it appeared, and I was okay with that. Again, over time, he went a little further right than I was comfortable with, and I obviously am no longer financially supporting him, but I'm not trying to speak for Floridians either, and I'm not trying to tell you what you should think. I'm telling you what I thought. Having said that, he's got a Democratic nominee that will go up against him, Val Demings, the first female police chief of Orlando, and she obviously has a chance to be the first black senator from Miami. Why do I say her gender or her color? There are people in those places who don't feel as if they've always been represented. They don't feel as if representation has always covered their experience. I didn't want Barack Obama to be a president for black people. I wanted him to be a president for Americans. And despite whatever party you're in, healthcare benefited people on both sides. People may disagree in the taxes and the cost and the details of how it worked out. There certainly was an opportunity to negotiate a little bit better. That didn't happen. That's part of the divide. I don't like that. That wasn't best for America. But there are Republicans who now have healthcare who didn't have it before. There are 20 million more people who now have healthcare who didn't have it before. And that's not just a blue or a red thing. Everybody who could get healthcare as a result of that benefited from that. And that was the goal. I appreciate things like that when it appears that it is for everyone, not just for the people who voted for any given politician in any particular policy. People can disagree. I don't have a problem with that. Nonetheless, I said black because there are Floridians who would like to see black people elevated to a position of power that will take into consideration things that are important to them. I said female because there are women who feel completely underrepresented, whose voices and opinions aren't necessarily felt and heard. Abortion is a great topic. A lot of women would like to see a woman in office making those decisions in Florida. It's not the sole and primary factor, and I do not want Val Demings or even Marco Rubio as a Cuban. I don't want people representing silos. I want them representing more people. And the more diverse the representation, the better the representation for the others in America. Although I hope any minority who's in a position of power and leadership represents the majority as well, equally well. Again, Val Demings is the Democratic nominee for the Senate in Florida. I think that is one of the things Mitch McConnell was worried about, places where the state could go one way or another. And when you put up strong candidates, what will the outcome be? It'll be interesting to see how that works out. Also in Florida, the governor, Charlie Crist, former governor Charlie Crist, won the Democratic nomination to challenge Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis is highly rumored to be going for the presidential nomination on the Republican side. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a minute. Charlie Crist, though, it probably will be confusing because I said Representative Charlie Crist, who's a Democrat, he was the former Republican governor of Florida. He left the party saying it was a little too extreme. That wasn't why I left. Again, it was reading George Bush's book. He said he didn't know the housing bubble was coming. I'm no financial genius, again, but I knew it was coming, and I actually bet against it. I did. I mean, it was pretty obvious to me, people buying homes with stated incomes, bad credit, getting loans for 125%, the loans being almost negative interest rates. None of it made sense. It just didn't make sense. There were some people who benefited from it, got houses. The equity in the houses allowed them to make different financial decisions. It could have changed their lives, but we also saw the impact of the housing bubble and the devastation it did to our economy and homes and families and businesses, and the list goes on and the impact of that. And I just didn't understand how George Bush couldn't have seen it. He has advisors, economists. He has people who understand these markets and could have given a warning. My belief and contention was, even though I voted for George Bush twice, listen, I'll say it again. I voted for George Bush twice. I thought he should have done a better job protecting all Americans. My belief is that because the economy was booming, concern about slowing it, controlling it, doing anything that could curtail it was probably the farthest thing from anyone's mind. Then we ended up in the housing bubble. And Bush, like Trump, left with bad economies. And if you're a staunch Republican and you wanted better outcomes, we didn't get them. I say we because I used to be a Republican. I can tout every talking point you do, although it's gone to a place that I no longer understand. I can't tout all of the conservative values and talking points anymore because things like the national security, the sources and methods going away in the snap of a finger, I don't respect that. So I can't speak to that standard any longer. But Val Demings is going to be representing the nomination in the Senate. Charlie Crist, the former Republican governor, will do so for the gubernatorial job in Florida. Some ironies. One of the first things he says he'll do, and quote, on day one of my administration, I will sign an executive order protecting a woman's right to choose. Charlie Crist has always been pro-life. Now, maybe he's pro-life like I am. I'm pro-life. I'm also pro-minding my business on your life. And unless what I do impacts yours, I don't have a right to. And I don't need leadership to tell me or other people otherwise. Now, pro-life normally includes thinking that the fetus life begins at conception, but I believe that to be a religious thing for me. Science tells us viability is at a different point, and I do not like abortion after viability, and that's another discussion. But Charlie Crist, a pro-lifer, according to him, the first thing he's going to do is sign an executive order protecting the woman's right to choose. Well, I guess when he left the Republican Party, the power structure and the things that were important to the right, he had to abandon some of them to be received on the left. It'll be interesting if former Republicans will vote for him. It'll be interesting if Democrats believe he's gone far enough to the left for them. I hope he's in the middle. I hope he's figured out how to moderate his personal views with the views of people in Florida. I hope an issue like abortion is actually voted on in Florida so that the leaders don't have to take issue with what the people they're representing actually want. And I do believe a lot of leaders take issue with what the people in their states actually want. Moving on. The New York Times published some interesting details today. One of the reasons, if I were in the Republican Party, I'd be running from it right now, or I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs, what are we doing? What is happening? One of the things I'd love to discuss with real Republicans, not the talking heads, not the experts, not the people who come on these shows and they bloviate, and obviously no other opinions are heard because they have the bias of one network or another, or one podcaster or one radio show or another. I really wish, again, that the thoughtful, respectful conversations would happen so we would hear more of both sides more often. But the New York Times came out with a story today, and they're really still focusing on the big lie and the politicians that are running for election, the number of them that are in positions or trying to put themselves in positions of power. It's amazing how many of them think the election was stolen. I do not happen to believe that. I love the people who think it was. In our system, we have a justice system that gets to adjudicate those issues. I believe this issue was adjudicated 60 plus times. I know anytime you get one judge that wasn't appointed by the person in your party, you try to discredit the judge completely. You don't even have to look at their rulings. You don't even have to see if they've been fair and impartial. You just do it by virtue of party, which again is one of the reasons I can't stand our two-party system. I'd love for a third party to step in. Again, I can't get completely behind the forward party. I don't know enough, but I love their logo. I love their motto, not left, not right, but forward. I don't care if the left loses power. I don't care if the right loses power. I don't think either one of them is doing the right thing with it. I don't think they're compromising. I don't think they're moderate enough to advance the causes of more Americans. I think they're advancing the causes of their voters, and it's not what I'm in favor of. You know, I'd love to see a third party that would minimize the impact of the right and the left. That would be fantastic. The New York Times, though, took a look at the people who are denying the election, the number of them running, the number of them that might be in a political position to change outcomes, the number of them that might actually be able to put up a fake slate of electors because they don't like the ones that the people voted on. I find all of that to be Disgusting, un-American, unpatriotic. To want what you want so bad that you're willing to take all of our norms, are willing to take all of our rules, you're willing to ignore the process to get what you want. I find that to be one of the most unpatriotic things a human being can do. And when something's been adjudicated 60 times, I've got questions in various areas of the legal system, and I'd like those areas to be addressed. I'm not reducing the entire legal system to nothingness. I'm not trying to defund the police. I'd like to take some of their budget and give it to mental health services, because an officer with a gun, untrained to deal with mental illness, sometimes is the trigger for an episode that could have been avoided with a professional better equipped. Does the money need to come from the police? No. It'd be great if it came from other sources. So defunding the police has always been silly. Now we're listening to defund the FBI. Again, another discussion. We've had that in a couple previous episodes. But the idea that people are willing to throw aside now the FBI because they raided one person, and the justice system because 60 times they said this election fraud thing you're screaming about didn't exist. It was one of the most secure elections we've had. There are always anecdotal stories of my uncle did this and my cousin did that, but it did not accumulate to the point of mass voter fraud. Again, adjudicated 60 times. But in our upcoming elections, half of the Republicans in major elected positions are still denying that the election was anything but stolen. Half of our leadership believes a lie. Half of our major elected officials believe a lie. If it's not a lie, anytime, jump on the comments. Tell me why it's not a lie. But assuming, having been adjudicated as many times as it has, and been researched and dug into as many times in as many ways by as many people as it has, if we're assuming it's a lie, half of our major elected officials believe it and are promoting it and pushing it. They're endorsing people who believe it and promote it and are pushing it. People are using it as their primary campaign push, their slogan, their motivation for running, even a lie. At some point, we'll have to say half of America could be a lie. We're better than that. 2/3 of current Republican House members believe it was a lie. 2/3 of one half of our political system is denying the 2020 election. My son comes home, he tells me the teacher's horrible. She did this, she did this, she did this. I look at my son and say, I don't care what the teacher did. Did you do what you were supposed to do? Did you do your job? Did you study? Were you prepared? Did you submit it? You give me 60 other children independently with the same outcome. Long before we get to 60, I might start having some questions. When we get to 60, if I don't have clear, concise evidence to the contrary, I'm probably going to have long since been active in trying to rectify that, clarify that, get a conclusion that is more reasonable. 2/3 of our current House isn't looking for a more reasonable conclusion after it's been adjudicated 60 times. They're still pushing it and endorsing it. 8 senators, 17 attorneys generals. Is this really where we still are as a country when we already know the answer is yes? The divide sometimes is on a lie. Why would you pick the side of a lie? And again, if you don't think it's a lie, feel free. Jump in the comments. Tell me why it's not. Oh boy, I'm curious to understand why it's not a lie. You can't imagine how curious I am. With that curiosity, though, you have to look forward. You have to understand that there are future politicians. There are people running for office right now. As a result of the primaries yesterday, there's some conclusions. There are some decisions that have been made in states. But from the New York Times article, there are also some enablers. I've been digging into Ron DeSantis. He could end up being a Republican candidate for the presidency. And I found out that he's a much more polished, much more credible version of Trump. And he gets stuff done. He's not just about talk and pounding his chest about how tough he is. He makes things happen. And whether I agree with those things is less of an issue other than his adeptness at working through some of those things. So he is someone that I think you can't help but to consider as you move forward. You can't help but to take note of who he is, where he is, and what he would want to see for America. One of the issues, though, the New York Times explored again was this big lie. And Ron DeSantis does his best to avoid answering that question directly. Oftentimes, according to the article, he deflects and he goes in different directions when that question is being asked. Now, here's the reality. He wants to distance himself from Trump because he wants to run against him. This is the article's contention, and I believe this as well. And quite frankly, I think he needs to. He can't be a repeat of Trump. Trump is Trump. We don't need a second Trump. He wants to distinguish himself. He wants to be the more refined version. He wants to be the more professional version. He wants to be a better version without some of the stuff that came with Trump, but still trying to accomplish much of the same things that were important for primarily the same people, which is where the conflict actually comes in. They listed him as an enabler because he avoids addressing the lie himself, but he wants Trump supporters. So he has to walk a very fine line to make sure he's getting the support of the people who want Trump or who wanted Trump or people who are maybe starting to walk away a little bit. He wants them. He needs them. That base would be important to him too. But he doesn't want to stand there in front of everybody and repeat the same lie. He literally goes to another subject. But he's still endorsing people who deny the validity of the 2020 election. It used to be the moral majority. It's still where, for all intents and purposes, you can align religion more so and religion through politics more so on the right than the left. It just is the way it is. If you disagree, feel free to let me know. I'm not trying to tell you what to think. I'm telling you what I think and asking you to input your end. But if you support people who still deny the election and you don't say it, are you still complicit? Are you still responsible? Are you still carrying out an injustice against America? Are you still playing with democracy? I didn't say you're destroying it. You're playing with it. Because if people use this as a tactic and deny that they lost every single time, and they say it's always fraud, and it gets adjudicated 60 times, and it's not found that there's evidence of what they're claiming, is that just how our system is going to work? Or better yet, can our system work? If that's how we handle every election, that somebody you like loses, they scream it's fraud, they don't accept it. Is that just how we move forward? Is that the plan we're taking for our kids and our grandkids? Come on, America, that's absurd. Ron DeSantis, I'm digging in. I'm trying to figure out where you are, who you are. And we won't align politically because I'm in the center. We might be able to be more productive, and I don't say as if he and I are going to talk, but the movements and the culture, if he moderates at least the rhetoric, while trying to get what's important to him. But people can't forget that while he doesn't speak to the lie, he endorses people who do. And I don't understand what that means for America. And then there are people on the far extreme, and they're paying the price. You already know I think Liz Cheney is a hero. We didn't align politically. I'm a moderate in the middle. I don't know that she is. Her political views do not align with mine. She was not my first choice in anything, but she clearly wasn't Wyoming's choice. You pay the price. That's fine. That's the way our system works. You concede just like she did. It's not that complicated. But she's more on the zero tolerance side about the lie. And she took, action. She's a part of the January 6th hearing. They're investigating, and she was willing to give up her seat, which she openly said would have been easy to maintain if she had accepted the lie and didn't speak against it. She's a hero. Where are the rest of the zero tolerance people? Where are they? Boy, do I want to know where the rest of the zero tolerance people are. Mixed results from the primaries yesterday. Lots of people, or as it's being described, lots of the establishment politicians on the left and right, the mainstream of the political parties as we used to know it, not the election deniers, not the far left progressives that just want the government to fix everything, which I believe is absurd. But last night, several ultra MAGA, and this is from Axios, several ultra MAGA candidates fell short in their primary bids, due in large part to not having the favor President Trump's endorsement. Representative from New York, 2nd District, Andrew Garbarino, Republican, who broke with his party on votes on infrastructure, gay marriage, and the January 6th committee. He was able to fend off a right-wing challenger, Robert Cornicelli. New York State GOP Chair Nick Langworth beat scandal-ridden developer and former gubernatorial candidate Carl Palladino. In Florida, in the 7th, Army veteran Corey Mills, more conventional conservative, beat right-wing state rep Anthony Sabatini, who called for the arrest of FBI agents. Good. Why? Do you have evidence of that? Do you want to be in leadership where you ask for things to happen where there's no evidence that they should? In the 11th in Florida, Daniel Webster, Republican, beat Laura Loomer, a prominent far-right anti-Muslim conspiracy theorist. There are Muslims in America, and you're a fool to think that you could ever make it any other way. Thank goodness you didn't win. Dan Goldman, the Levi Strauss heir, who prosecuted the first House impeachment against President Trump, won after progressive rivals, including Representative Mondaire Jones, a Democrat out of New York, teamed up to try to curb his momentum. Good. Former Representative Max Rose easily defeated veteran and progressive activist Brittany DeBarros in a race to take on Representative Nicole Malliotakis. Lots more individual news. It sounds like more moderate or establishment versions of people in the left and right won. Boy, would it be great if more moderate people won and they wanted to talk on both sides of the aisle. That would be exciting. That would be a goal of mine. That would actually be success. Now, there are some areas that you're just not going to find success. Some areas you just have to accept the ridiculousness of the politics in America. I'm going to blow this one up. This one should be bigger. This is blackmail. Republicans deny flood funding to New Orleans over opposition to the abortion ban. I'm going to say that again. And there, the veracity of it, I can't dig in. You can tell me if you're in New Orleans, if you're in Louisiana, if you understand the politics there better. I just am covering things that are just screaming out in the news. This is blackmail. Republicans deny flood funding to New Orleans over opposition to abortion ban. Progressives are sounding the alarm about the lengths to which GOP officials appear to be willing to go in advance of their deeply unpopular and reactionary agenda after Louisiana's State Bond Commission, at the urging of far right-wing attorney Jeff Landry, once again denied flood prevention resources to New Orleans due to the city's opposition to the state's abortion ban. If there is a flood and the resources were not made available and people die, I hope they prosecute people playing this game for murder. Now, it's politics and their opinion, so it doesn't work that way. But boy, if it could, it should. If they are actually doing this, it would be an example of the extremes that should be intolerable to all of us. We've seen what can happen in New Orleans with flooding. Are we really pitting abortion against flooding? Is that really the story? Is that really a game Republicans are playing? And feel free, send me games Democrats are playing. Love to call that out too. And if we take a quick look at the news from right-wing media, you'll see that typically regarding policy, there's not much to offer. But we'll take a look at that, because I know a lot of people are thinking, well, why don't you talk about the Democrats? Well, the people most likely to talk about the Democrats, I'll show you their web pages. I'll show you what they're talking about today. I'll show you the difficulty in finding stories that have teeth, that dig into the ridiculousness of the other side. It is out there. It happens. I do not for one second think that there are Democrats that are not, above being absurd. I want to call that out too. But this, it jumped out. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't. Like I couldn't ignore this. And this is from my former party. I say that, folks, I was a Republican. I was a Republican for a long time. There were viewpoints that were starting to be adopted. There were viewpoints that they always had that I didn't necessarily agree with. I was younger. I think I was naive to some of them. And I wasn't always naive to the subject matter as a whole, but the impact of the individual people. I didn't know enough to have a strong enough opinion. As I learned more, I became more moderate and moved further to the left within the Republican Party, to the point where I was a moderate Republican up until my health care was a game or something that was volleyed around as if it was a game, and I didn't find it funny. I didn't enjoy that game, so I wanted to stop playing. I called myself a centrist. I did vote for Obama. I voted for Obama for personal reasons beyond just politics. I'll cover that one day. But right now, if I had to identify myself, I'm a centrist. If I had to pick a political party, I'm slightly left of center, but I don't want to be a Democrat. I want to be an American. And I want to move forward, which obviously goes in line with that forward party. Don't know enough about it to endorse it. But not left, not right, forward. Still, again, sounds really exciting. But what doesn't sound exciting is there was a candidate running for office in Oklahoma yesterday, Scott Esk. He previously, openly, supported stoning to death gays. Do I really need to go on? I don't care what your religious beliefs are. If that's one that you believe is real, please remember there's a separation of church and state, and your religion is yours. And the day you think you can put your religion on everyone else and stone people because they do not align with your values, you become the problem in America, not the gay people. Let people live their lives. They don't have to define them the same way you do. Let them live them as long as it doesn't step into your house and punch you in the mouth. When it does, I'll stand next to you and make sure it stops. You can't read this. I'll try to blow it up. It's not my intention to have you read articles on the show. But in 2014, when Esk was running for a statewide office, KFOR in Oklahoma City's NBC affiliate reported that Esk commented on Facebook the previous year in response to somebody's question about whether homosexuals should be executed. He responded, presumably by stoning, following Pope Francis' comments that suggesting he cannot judge them. I think we'd be totally in the right to do it, he wrote. That goes against some parts of libertarianism, I realize, and I'm largely libertarian, but ignoring as a nation things that are worthy of death is very remiss. He said these things himself. He was running for the state representative. He's running for office as a state representative. And in his remarks, he stated the execution of gay people were a matter of the Old Testament law that came directly from God. I'm a believer. Be happy to share my faith anytime. But God doesn't give orders in the U.S. Constitution. I'd like the impact of my religion to, in a positive way, affect others. But I respect that others don't believe what I believe. And I think you should too. Having said that, fortunately, he lost. Gloria Bannister, Republican in this particular county, is presumed to be the winner, having collected from an estimated 99% of the counted votes, 57% of those votes. The question, though, the other 42%. And don't get me wrong, it was only 879 votes for the winner, 638 for Scott Esk. There are mail-in ballots that have not been included. I suppose it could change. What is the logic for the people who voted, the 638 people who voted for Esk? Is it religion? I'm not discrediting your religion. We may share the same one. But what motivated you to vote for him, even though he's calling for the stoning of people, human beings? Do you feel the same way? Those are the types of divisive issues and questions that we're going to be asking here every day on the Divided States of America show. We are going to be here weekdays, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about things just like this. The stoning of gays. A person running for office received 42% of the vote after having said that. That is certainly something I would consider divisive issues, as I believe homosexuals have a right, LGBTQ have a right to live a normal life like everybody else, regardless of my religion. Again, we'll cover these divisive issues on the Divided States of America show, weekdays at noon, 3 p.m. Pacific. You can watch all of the episodes on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. There have been 32 others before today. I appreciate the time you've spent tuning in, listening to the messages that we have. I appreciate if you share with friends. We'll let you know when we start that boost to get a larger audience, bring on regular guests, and get much more of your feedback. But until then, your feedback is appreciated. host@thedsashow.com is my email. Best way to reach out to me and tell me what you're thinking. And always, again, feel free to comment. I can't thank you enough for tuning into the Divided States of America show. That's it for today. That was exhausting. Stoning gays, 2022 in the United States, in the Divided States of America. Come on. We've got to be better than that. Who knows? Maybe we're not.
Thanks for watching the Divided States of America show. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the channel and share this video with your family and friends.